set to order. I'm Councilmember Weezar. I've been joined by Councilmember Englander. This is the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. We could call item let's do this. Let's first go to two items that will be continued. Item number 7, which is an appeal of the APZ and ZA approval of a 16-foot tall errant golf ball deflection fence. That will be continued to April 8th, 2014, if that's okay with my colleague. And that was item number 7. Item number 8, consideration of zone change and general plan amendment from R32 to R42 and clarification of conditions for property at 3525 West 8th Street. That will be continued for 180 days. Now, do we need an exact date, Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Chair. That would be October 7th. However, Mr. McQuiston submitted a card.
Oh, we have a card on that. Okay. Well, are we required to hear the card, or should we? We're continuing it. What's the rule on that?
Terry Kaufman, Mcia, City Attorney's Office. If someone submits a card on an item on the agenda, they have the right to speak. I don't know if Mr. McQuiston still wants
Even
to
if we continue it, okay.
speak on it. If the
Mr.
item's
McQuiston,
been
you still wish to
continued.
speak? Yes? No? Okay. All right, so that will be continued to October
7th.
7th, 2014. So those two items have been taken care of with the concurrence of Mr. Englander. Item number 9, Director's Report.
Good afternoon, council members. Michael LeGrand for the record. Just a few brief items to report. First of all, thank you for having staff here under items 1, 2, and 3 do brief presentations on a lot of the work program that the department's been working on last year and into next year. We're very excited to bring these forward and have the opportunity to present them some preliminary work that we're doing and get people excited about participating in our upcoming workshops. As a quick announcement, we're going to have 7 community-wide meetings regarding 4 different planning initiatives, 3 different city-wide planning initiatives, the RECODE project, RECODE LA, Plan for a Healthy Los Angeles, as well as Mobility Plan 2035. 7 community workshops everywhere from the North Valley to the Harbor to South Los Angeles, East Los Angeles, West Los Angeles, and Central, as well as the South Valley. So we're very excited to bring these workshops all across the city, give the public one chance to hear about all these items at one time rather than spending multiple evenings engaging us on these topics. Again, it's the beginning of our outreach on these, not the end, so there'll be a lot more opportunities to give feedback, but we are very excited to get these plans along the way and help move our city to a more livable city in the future years as we come. We're very excited to have this opportunity to present with you, and I'm excited to hear my staff come forward and present the materials in the forthcoming measures. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will take those items up in a little bit, and want to congratulate you and your planning department and several other agencies. We had a weekend 2 weekends ago that we dubbed the $2 billion weekend. Broke ground on the Metropolis site that will build a hotel, much needed hotels near the convention center, and 3 condo structures, and also the Grand Port, the Wilshire Grand, to continue to add more rooms, hotel rooms to downtown, which we are in need of. So thank you for your department's work on those projects and for moving those projects forward. And next item, why don't we take up item number 5, and then we'll go back to items 1, 2. Well, actually, we'll take up 5 and 6, and then we'll go back to items 1, 2, and 3. So item number 5, can you read that into the record, please?
Sure. Item 5, Councilman, is a communication from the Planning Commission. It relates to a transfer of floor area rights in Council District to a receiver site, as noted in the addresses in the agenda.
Great. Do we have staff here to give us just a brief preview of this project? Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, Councilman. My name is Blake Lamb with the Planning Department. The project before you today was approved by the City Planning Commission on February 4th, 2014. The entire project proposes 2 new mixed-use residential buildings downtown along Pico Boulevard at Flower and Hope Street. Site A, which is the building that's before you today, would consist of a 248-unit apartment building with approximately 30,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space. And then Site B, which is not before you today, but which was approved by the City Planning Commission, would consist of a 162-unit apartment building with 13,000 square feet of commercial retail uses. Site A is before you today because it's requesting a transfer of floor area rights of 86,466 square feet from the Convention Center, along with associated public benefits and transfer payment. At the January 23rd, 2014 City Planning Commission meeting, the CPC approved the transfer of floor area rights for Site A, which would allow a 4.78 FAR and 232,501 square feet. The City Planning Commission has recommended that the City Council adopt the transfer of floor area rights for this project. It would include a required public benefits payment of $935,510 and a TFAR transfer payment of $432,330 for the transfer of the square footage from the Convention Center. 50% of the required public benefit payment, which was that $900,000, which would total, the 50% totals $467,755, would be paid into the city's public benefit trust fund. And then the applicant proposes for the remainder of that money to be provided as a direct provision, which would include physical improvements, streetscape improvements for approximately $250,000, and then the remaining would be money paid to a variety of organizations. The Los Angeles Streetcar would get approximately $150,000. The South Park Business Improvement District would get approximately $35,000 for green space and pocket parks, and then the California Hospital Medical Center would get approximately $15,000 for their Hope Street Margolis Family Center. And then the Metro Charter School would get approximately $15,000 for after-school programs. The City Planning Commission also recommends that the City Council adopt the mitigated negative declaration that was prepared for this project. At their January 23rd meeting, the CPC relied on the MND for the decisions that they made on the variety of other entitlements that the project needed. They heard and had a very robust discussion on several environmental issues that were raised, in particular traffic and transportation issues that were raised by a neighbor. After that very thorough discussion and vetting of those issues, the City Planning Commission has ultimately recommended that the City Council adopt the MND for their action on the transfer of floor area rights. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. We have several speakers all in support, so sometimes I like to give the advice to stop while you're ahead, right? But if you want to keep your comments brief, we'll appreciate it. If you don't want to speak, just wave you off or just come up and say something brief. Daniel Taban, applicant. And the applicant has 5 minutes. All other speakers, 1 minute. 1 minute.
Good afternoon, Councilman. I am Daniel Taban of Jade Enterprises, a privately held family real estate investment, development, and management firm based in Los Angeles for more than 30 years. Jade is an affiliate of the applicant, Alpine Group, and Onyx East Apartments. I want to thank the Planning Department for its presentation and hard work, and especially would like to thank the tireless efforts of Councilman Jose Huizar and his diligent staff for helping us through the city entitlement process. Our firm has significant ties to downtown Los Angeles and the greater Los Angeles community. We're currently headquartered at 9th and Figueroa in downtown, 4 blocks north and 1 block west of the proposed project. Onyx will transform the southern portion of downtown Los Angeles and will bring both retail and housing across the street from the Expo and Blue Line metro stations. Our project includes extensive community benefits and is supported by the Downtown LA Neighborhood Council, South Park BID, California Hospital, Downtown's Metro Charter School, and LA Streetcar Inc. We look forward to continue developing projects in Los Angeles and investing in our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Eric Metz. Your wave, okay. He's with the Los Angeles Streetcar Inc., a great organization doing great work to bring back a streetcar to downtown Los Angeles. Ryan Lederman. Your wave, okay. All right. Noel Fleming from Central City. Your wave as well. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, and I'd too like to thank the Planning Department for their thorough and diligent work on this project. I understand this is the first transfer of floor area project to come through the city since the Community Redevelopment Agency was dissolved in 2011. And I think even with this, the staff did a great job in learning how to move this forward and the processes that are required absent the CRA. And I understand that the City Planning Commission will soon be considering an ordinance to remove references to the CRA from the zoning code in order to simplify the process for projects like this. And this project in particular will bring 410 new housing units and over 42,000 square feet of commercial development to the growing South Park community in downtown Los Angeles. The project also generates hundreds of thousands of dollars in community benefits. It has a unique, compelling design, abundant bicycle parking, and improved public right-of-way. For these reasons and others, I'd like to lend my support to the project and move it forward today. So I'll move that we move this item forward to full council. Any questions or comments? No. Second by Mr. Eglander. So moved. No objections. This will go to council when? We don't know yet.
Mr. Chair, it'll have to be after the recess. Council is on recess starting this Friday.
Okay, so we'll schedule that after next week sometime. Great, thank you very much. So moved in to full council. Thank you, congratulations. Next item, item number 6.
Item 6, Councilman, is an appeal by Janice Lazaroff. She's appealing the zoning administrator's approval of a height variance in CD 5.
Okay, thank you. I think this item was moved at the previous meeting. However, with the abundance of caution, we are allowing for public hearing to be held. Again, I'd like to advise that action has already been taken, but we wanted to provide some adequate time for comment. So the applicant is Brant DeVerne.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We are going to take action on this today. This committee took action on this, and we submitted it to council. Full city council did not take action, but we are back just to ensure that there was adequate time for a public hearing. So with that, we'll have the first speaker, the applicant, who has 5 minutes.
Yes, I'm Brant DeVerne. I'm Brant DeVerne from the law firm of Lewis Brisbois. I represent the applicant. I was here last time. A couple points that I want to add to what I said last time. First, the standard for a variance is difficulty with a site, not impossibility. And I say that because in all the documents that's come from the opposition, we hear a recurring theme that it is possible to build something on this site other than what the applicant wants. That is not the standard. It's not in the ordinance. It's not the legal standard. It's difficulty. And this is a very difficult site. The second point is collectively. Any individual item on this site, probably not a problem. But when you take it collectively as opposed to individually, this is an extremely difficult site. You have two gradients, one running east to west at 16 feet and another running south to north. You have, because the council imposed preservation of the stream, you can't use a full third of this lot. So you're extremely constrained. You have to be at least 55 feet away from Stone Canyon. There's a floodplain, and because of the flood zone that goes through there, you can't have any livable space below ground, which is why everything has to be above ground. So it's difficult. We have to look at this collectively. Third point is, the ZA's opinion in this particular matter is unbiased. These are not a carbon copy of our findings. It's the ZA's own findings. What you have from the ABC is a carbon copy of the opposition findings. Those findings do not even mention the declaration from our engineer, Leonard Liston, who said under penalty of perjury that this is the only thing you can build on this site, and was very clear that this is a collectively difficult site. And what I said last time, what the APC did is it singled out one factor and said, well, other properties have a lengthy frontage, or other properties have the stream, but none other have as many collective difficulties as this site. Point number 4, pictures. People say things. Pictures tell one story. There's pictures that I showed you last time that are in the file that show two things. There are no impacts. And also, in addition to being no impacts, it shows all the difficulties of the site. I drew your attention to pictures 1, 4, and 10, and it shows that the extreme limitations of this site and that nobody's view impacts. The only view impact on from this property goes to the country club on Stone Canyon. And because of the gradient that slopes towards Stone Canyon, even though that's above 36 feet, the view from Stone Canyon is only 33 feet. There's no community opposition to this. The Bel Air Association supports this project. What we've had is a single opposition since 2006, since we began, both on Stone Canyon. We had it for the parcel map, we had it for the haul routes, we had it for the retaining walls, and it's always the same opposition. It's Ms. Lazaroff and her attorney, Victor Marmon. This is personal. It's not a community-based opposition. We're all familiar with that. It needs to stop, and we need your help to make it stop. The next point is minimal. This is a minimal height restriction. It only applies to only 18% of this home closest to Stone Canyon, and the only part you can see is 33 feet. The rest of it, it's all at 36 feet. It's important to note that there's a home to the, I guess it's to the south of this property. It is 620 North Canyon. It's at 59 feet, and it's on a hill. This property's on a relatively flat lot with a slope. That's on a hill. We went back and looked at that. There was not a single opposition to 620 North Stone Canyon at 59 feet. So you have to ask yourself, why is there opposition to this on something nobody can see? That from the only point you can see it is actually only 33 feet. And I think you'll find your answer. We request and ask for your support to recommend this to council and to approve this height variance. And I'm here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Victor Marmon, Hayward, Dan Fisk.
I may have just a moment, please.
Sure, are you the appellant?
Represent the appellant.
Okay, so you also have 5 minutes, sir.
How many minutes, sir?
5.
Thank you.
And then all other speakers have 1 minute.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Englander, members of the public, city staff. My name is Victor Marmon. I represent the appellant. This is not a personal matter. This is a matter of city-wide importance. The Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council, the official city body for this area, is opposed to this variance. Homeowner neighbors are opposed to this variance. The Bel Air Country Club across the street from the property is opposed to this variance. The Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association is opposed to this variance. The Boca Homeowners Association, which is represents the Santa Monica Canyon and Pacific Palisades area, is opposed to this variance. People from all over the city have written in to oppose this variance. Why? Because if it can happen in Bel Air, it can happen in any place. It can happen in South LA. It can happen in Pacoima. It can happen in North Hollywood. It can happen in the North Valley. It can happen anywhere in the city. And what is it that's happening? Ignoring the rules that say that variances are not easy. Variances are exceptions. 5 special findings must be made, and they can't be made in this case. And in particular, people are incensed about this because this constitutes the first step in the piecemeal dismantling of the baseline hillside ordinance, an ordinance that was subject to massive public hearings, subject to tremendous public input, and which was passed unanimously by your council to regulate overdevelopment in the hillsides. Now, I want to make it clear. This is not about square footage or mansionization. This is about height. Mr. Tokunaga made it very clear at the hearing on September 25th when we pointed out that we thought that the baseline hillside ordinance prohibited a house of this size. He says, that's not before me. That will be handled later. The applicant will have to comply with the baseline hillside ordinance and whatever it says. So fine, we're talking about height, not size or mansionization. And finally, we're talking about granting a special privilege to a big developer, and that's not fair. That's not fair to the citizens of this city. Now let's talk about some of the specifics. There are a multitude of reasons. The counsel for the applicant misstated the facts. The APC found numerous instances where the ZA erred and abused his discretion, and that's what you're here to find today, whether that happened or not. As examples, the ZA said that because of the way the height was measured initially from near the stream, where the applicant put its house, where the applicant created this supposed hardship or practical difficulty, because of the way it's measured, that causes the rest of the house to have to be lowered. That's not true. The baseline hillside ordinance specifically says that you have a building envelope that allows a height envelope that goes up a slope. The applicant didn't need to design a flat, consistent roofed house. The applicant could have terraced its house and complied with the law. The applicant could have designed the house to comply with the law. Moreover, the applicant's desire for a consistent roof line is simply not applicable. State law says that attractiveness of design does not have any legal significance and is irrelevant. The applicant presented no evidence that it cannot build a house similar to houses in the area. This is approximately 1.8 acre site. Using the applicant's figures, which we don't think are entirely accurate, but let's just use them. 35% of the property is not developable. What does that mean? Over 1.2 acres are left to develop. You can develop a heck of a house and all the amenities, swimming pools, guest houses, everything on 1.2 acres, as is the case throughout Bel Air. Finally, we would simply ask that the council follow the rules and deny this, that this committee recommend to the council that it follow the rules and deny this variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Hayward, Dan Fisk, and Marion Dodge.
Mr. Chairman and colleagues, thank you for the opportunity to be heard. I'm a past chief legal officer for a Fortune 150 company headquartered here in Los Angeles until recently, and following that served as a senior partner of the largest law firm in the world, DLA Piper. In years past, I was a city councilman. I was chairman of a planning commission. I'm here to speak for justice. I live in Stone Canyon, not far from the two properties in question. My concern in a nutshell is that based upon what the applicant for the variance proposes to do, we're going to have a very ugly commercial-looking property right at the marquee entrance of Bel Air on Stone Canyon which would be a travesty and would be hodgepodge zoning. I ask that the Commission, this committee, and the Council look at this case on the merits, not based upon some political influence. And I thank you for the opportunity to be heard.
Okay, thank you. Marion Dodge, Steve Twinning.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Marion Dodge, president of the Hillside Federation, representing 43 homeowners associations. The Federation urges you to deny a height variance at 1050 Bellagio Road. A year ago, the city lost a lawsuit in a similar situation where council also asserted jurisdiction under 245 on variances requested for 1100 Stearns Drive. The judge ruled that City Council abused its discretion in granting these variances. The court held that substantial evidence did not support the granting of the variances. The court further noted that policy goals may not be used by City Council to dismantle the city's zoning scheme in a piecemeal fashion. Bellagio Road is very similar. The findings cannot be met, there's no hardship, there are no special circumstances. Granting these variances would be dismantling the baseline hillside ordinance that the City Council enthusiastically adopted. How much did the city have to pay when it lost the case? How many man-hours were spent defending a decision that's not done in a thoughtful, reasoned manner? The Federation urges you to deny the height variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Twinning. Jim McQuiston.
Yes, it's Twining, Steve Twining. I live at 1535 Roscommere Road. I'm a Bel Air resident for over 40 years. I'm President Emeritus of the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council and Chair Emeritus of the Hillside Federation. I oppose the 50-foot height limit. 3 times the Area Planning Commission opposed this variance, 2 times at 360 Stone Canyon and once at 10550 Bellagio Road adjacent. This is a self-imposed hardship. 2, how would you guys like a 50-foot home adjacent to yours? I don't think you'd like it. 3, this is a very dangerous precedent following the adoption of the baseline mansionization ordinance, which we worked very hard for several years with Eric Lopez prior to its adoption. 360 Stone Canyons is different than the current case because it was its entitlements were in place before the baseline mansionization ordinance. Please refer to the City Watch article, LA City's Council Campaign Cash is King in today's City Watch. I asked the attendant to provide that to you. I think you guys should return the campaign contributions before you vote on this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim McQuiston.
Jim McQuiston, you have my latest addenda. I got to say this, you know, we have a planning department that puts out regulations, and then what we all have to do is to stick by them. And this council has the ability to say, no, we don't like those regulations, we want different ones, and you can do that, but you don't do it piecemeal. And Justice Arabian has said this in a very famous Supreme Court decision, and as you notice, I've noted also the Attorney General has put in his 2 cents on this. I think we really have to say, look, you can do it. Why don't you just do it the way we tell you to do it? And people will say, okay, we'll do it your way. We're not going to spend your time trying to get around the regulations anymore. And we'll all be a lot more benefit to that if planning can do its job and the City Council can do its job, and we don't have to spend time on things that we don't really want to get into.
Thank you. Sean Bayless from Council District 5.
Good afternoon. Sean Bayless, Councilmember Paul Corrett's office. The matter before you today involves an appeal to a property that was approved for a height variance for a single-family home. The zoning administrator, after hearing all the testimony and taking into consideration all the facts of the case, approved the applicant's request. In the determination, the zoning administrator answered in the affirmative the 5 findings that are required to be made for the variance. Those findings were detailed and comprehensive and clearly laid out the justification for the approval. Those justifications are based on the city's mandate to both maintain the creek and apply an additional buffer along the waterway. Additionally, the sloping of the topography, both up and downhill, further restrict the development capability of the site. Combine that with the stream and additional buffer and the manner in which the city measures height, and these factors have created an unnecessary hardship. After much deliberation and community input, the zoning administrator recognized the practical difficulty the site created and approved the applicant's request for the needed height. Having looked at the facts and the limiting factors of the site, including the overwhelming majority of the home remaining code height, we have come to the conclusion that the zoning administrator did not err or abuse his discretion in granting the approval in this case. We would ask that you sustain the zoning administrator's approval and deny the appeal. Happy to answer questions.
Great, thank you. And if I could ask you a question. So you were in support of the zoning administrator's findings, correct?
That is correct.
And there was an appeal to the Area Planning Commission, which found otherwise. How, if I could ask, how is this not we had a number of questions and comments at the last committee meeting, but one thing I wanted to ask again is, how is this not self-imposed?
Sure. The site, when we take into consideration the waterway and things like that, the site is very long, and because the waterway slices through the long portion of it, it makes a kind of oddly thin parcel even thinner. When you combine that with the rear sloping portion of the property, it gets even thinner. So, you know, again, you could probably, you know, you could build a 2,000 square foot house, but that doesn't fit in with the community. The community actually demands much, much larger homes. So you take that in combination with the limitations of the site, and you've created some real difficulty.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, as we did at the last committee meeting, I'd move that we deny the appeal and sustain the original zoning administrator's determination, and that we adopt the original zoning administrator's findings. Is there a second for that? A second by Mr. Englander. So moved. No objections? Yes.
Councilman, you may also want to adopt the MND and any conditions of approval.
Okay, we'll also do that as well. Thank you. That'll be the order of this committee. And do we know when this is going to be heard in council?
Mr. Chair, this is in council tomorrow.
This will be in council tomorrow, full council tomorrow. Okay. Okay, thank you. And we have satisfied public comment for council meeting tomorrow. And thank you. And unless a council member opens up public hearing at that meeting, but it's been satisfied. Thank you. Next item, if we could do items number 1, 2, and 3 together, please, and if we could read those into the record.
Sure. Item 1, Councilman, these are all oral presentations from the Planning Department. Item 1 is relative to the Healthy LA, which is a new element of the city's general plan. Item 2 is the mobility element, which formerly was a transportation element. And item 3 is a status of the city's revision of the zoning code.
Good afternoon, councilors. My name is Claire Bowen, and I am the City Planning Department. I'm the Senior City Planner for the citywide section. I'm here to present to you on items 1 and 2. A citywide team that includes my law, Elizabeth Carvajal, and Lise Mendez have been developing the 2 general plan elements that I'm here to share briefly with you today. I wanted to first thank you for the opportunity at this early stage in the review process to provide you with a summary of these 2 plans, as well as outline our next steps. The city's general plan provides goals, objectives, policies, and programs that guide the city's growth and development. The general plan is comprised of topical elements that cover such topics as air quality, conservation, housing, land use, open space, and transportation. These elements are updated periodically. You may recall that the housing element, which is required by the state to be updated every 8 years, was updated this past fall. 2 years ago, we began work on the city's transportation element that was last updated in 1999. Or we started working on updating it. We're currently updating that we're currently calling it, they're calling this update the Mobility Plan 2035. Today, the city's vehicular focus has led us to some dubious distinctions. In 2012, we had 57 unhealthy air quality days, and 36,000 Angelenos were injured or killed in motor vehicle collisions last year. While the mobility plan recognizes the continued role that cars and trucks will continue to play in our city and region, the state has mandated us to comply with laws and initiatives such as AB 32, the California Global Warming Solutions Act, or AB 1358, California's Complete Streets Act, or the Federal Clean Air Act, and the newly adopted SB 731 that changes how we evaluate a project's impact on traffic. Guided by these regulations, we're suggesting a new approach where we'll put people's safety first when making transportation decisions. We'll provide safe and comfortable access to all forms of mobility, walking, bicycling, and transit. And we'll provide clear information about the variety of mobility options so Angelenos can make smart choices about their transportation. And will facilitate collaboration among departments and across agencies to make strategic decisions that leverage transportation funds to maximize multipurpose benefits. To do this, the plan includes goals and policies to guide us in making future decisions, as well as measurable objectives against which we can measure our progress. The plan also includes an action plan of programs that will prioritize for implementation in each year's budget package. Key components of the plan include a new complete street manual, updated street standards, and 3 networks: a transit-enhanced network, a bicycle-enhanced network, and a vehicle-enhanced network. Streets on a specific network will be improved to include features to support these different modes. And since each trip begins or ends with walking, pedestrian features are considered an important hallmark of all of the street's improvements. The second element that we're working on is the Plan for Healthy Los Angeles, which is a new element that we're proposing to add to the general plan. Interest in developing this plan grew out of an increasing awareness that many of the city's low-income communities face a greater proportion of adverse health conditions and poor outcomes. The plan was funded by the county's Department of Public Health through a community transformation grant, and additional monies for community outreach were provided by the California Endowment. One of the project's first steps was the development of a health atlas that provided a snapshot of current health issues and outcomes. The Health Atlas illustrates that our neighborhoods have widely varying socioeconomic conditions and demographic characteristics, health factors, and health outcomes. In a nutshell, the data underscores a key issue. Where Angelenos live is associated with their health and well-being. The data from the Health Atlas was used to inform the policies and plans and the policies and goals in the plan and help direct the plan's outreach efforts to the areas facing the most adverse health and safety outcomes. The plan draws our attention to the relationship between health and such issues as housing, transportation, open space, and environmental justice. It lays out a vision to create healthier communities for all Angelenos that include creating complete neighborhoods that meet residents' basic needs, providing access to healthy and sustainable neighborhoods, and providing opportunities for economic, educational, and social development. Both of these documents were recently released on February 13th for a 90-day public comment period that ends on May 13th, 2014. During the comment period, we will be hosting 7 community planning forums around the city. We encourage all Angelenos to come and visit with us at these forums to ask questions and give us your thoughts about these 2 plans. If someone can't come to the events, we encourage them to download the plans at planning.lacity.org or come to visit to City Hall or go to one of the regional libraries if they'd like to review a hard copy. Comments can also be sent here to City Hall if they can't actually come to our different planning forums. We expect to present the plans to the City Planning Commission towards the end of summer and early fall, and hope we'll be in front of you again early in the fall. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, and we will go to public comment right now. Then we'll come back for questions, if that's okay. Doug Arsenal and Claire Fox.
Thank you, council members. My name is Doug Arsenal of the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, VICA, representing more than 400 employers of over 250,000 people, including heavily impacted communities of the Northeast San Fernando Valley. VICA is cautiously optimistic about this plan. We wish to applaud the consultants on a thorough stakeholder outreach process, and we look forward to the plans that achieve an appropriate balance of improving health conditions and job creation through incentives and prioritizing city resources. We also look forward to working with stakeholders on the development of the healthy building standards. We would expect these standards to be consistent with the well-developed building design standards created by the Urban Design Studio. Further, we wish to reiterate that this chapter of the framework element remain within the boundaries of its 10,000-foot purview. We hope that the city will maintain an incentive-based, job-creating plan that ensures communities and businesses can partner to achieve a truly healthy Los Angeles in every way. Thank you.
Claire Fox, Heather Ketchel.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Claire Fox. I'm the Director of Policy and Innovation at the LA Food Policy Council. Our team is very proud to have participated already in the stakeholder process for the plan for a healthy LA through the technical and expert committees. We're very gratified to see that many of the initiatives and issues we care very deeply about are present in the draft plan. Access to healthy food for underserved communities, street food vending, corner store conversions, urban agriculture, food security, and institutional food procurement all have a presence in the draft of the plan under the goal Food That Nourishes the Body and Soul, which is a great title. The plan for a healthy LA has the ability to demonstrate the ways that food policy and food-anchored community development connects a diverse range of our policy concerns. And this really does go beyond access to grocery stores, though this is obviously a crucial part of the equation. But in fact, mounting public health research is questioning if the location of a grocery store alone can really address obesity and diet-related diseases. For this reason, we want to see institutionalized food systems approach that considers all of the ways that food is produced, distributed, and consumed. And we hope that the health and wellness element can be a place to connect all of those dots. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather Ketchel, Jim McQuiston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Committee. Heather Ketchel with Climate Resolve. Climate Resolve is a nonprofit organization dedicated to working with city leaders, organizations, businesses, and individuals throughout the city to create a better Los Angeles in the face of climate change. This report mentions that the best science that we have indicates that the city of Los Angeles is going to be experiencing increased temperatures due to climate change. Throughout the globe, more people perish during extreme heat events than any other extreme weather events, more than hurricanes, flooding, and extreme cold combined. The 2012 Climate Vulnerability and Adaptation Study for California found that on extremely hot days, mortality from various cardiovascular conditions is 28% higher, and our most vulnerable are at elevated risk for hospitalization for stroke, diabetes, acute kidney failure, dehydration, and pneumonia. It's clear that a changing climate is a threat to public health in Los Angeles. Fortunately, there are solutions, many of which this report mentions. Climate Resolve has been working with researchers at the University of Miami that found that mitigation strategies save lives, solutions like cool roofs, cool pavements, and shade trees. We wish to commend the Department of City Planning and the plan for including these, and this is a real opportunity for the city to save lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim McQuiston. And then for item number 2, we'll have General Jeff.
Jim McQuiston, you know this is going to be part of our general plan. The tail doesn't wag the dog. That means that once we put these things in the plan, they've got to be obeyed. And if they're not, then planning loses a lot of its enthusiasm. We have a lot of good people in planning, and we want to keep them happy, but we really want the council to say, look, we approve this plan and we're going to stick by it come hell or high water, and if someone doesn't like it, they're going to have to come with us and we're going to have to change the plan, but we're not going to vary anything in the plan once we've approved it. And I think that's really what the state wants us to do. And we can do it. We have the ability in the planning department to do that kind of thing. But once we turn them loose and we approve it, we've got to stick by it.
Thank you. General Jeff, on item 2.
Good afternoon. My name is General Jeff. I'm on the Board of Directors for the Downtown Los Angeles Neighborhood Council. I'm also a Skid Row community activist, and I'm also the chair of the Skid Row Public Space Task Force. And I just want to quickly point out to this committee that on item 2 on the agenda, the third line. It basically says the mobility element will provide policy guidelines for safe, accessible, and enjoyable streets. And I just want to say that the definition of enjoyable may be a contentious one moving forward in the future, because in the city of Los Angeles, with a multitude of diverse communities and cultures, there's many different ways that people in this Angelinos enjoy our streets. And just for instance, in Skid Row, there's a lot of difficulty with seating for public transportation. And so we feel that the definition of enjoyable needs to be looked at, because there are not a lot of enjoyable streets in all of downtown either. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think our staff covered items 1 and 2 on the healthy Los Angeles and the mobility element. We'll give them an opportunity to come up and quickly talk about item number 3, which is Recode LA. But on items 1 and 2, let me thank the planning department for thinking creatively and innovatively about including healthy communities in everything we do when it comes to using land use and planning tools that we have at our disposal. That's why I've been, when in my district, we've been talking a lot about complete streets, and the city has been talking a lot about complete streets, as the Department of Transportation has now taken up that challenge as well with the people, what's it called? Streets for People. What is it called? People Streets now, where they're trying to find more ways to provide complete streets. That component as well speaks to health. And in everything we do in planning and land use, to actually recognize the importance of trying to improve health as well in a very direct way like this makes a lot of sense. And on the mobility element, I think there too, we are not only moving forward in doing what we are required by state law to do, which is update our general plans and community plans, et cetera, including mobility, but kind of doing it in a more creative fashion that we have had in the past is something that the planning department should be committed for as well. Again, I want to remind everybody that we do have these community plans as our community workshops. As the General Manager Michael LeGrand mentioned, there are 7 community planning forums that are taking place, and I encourage everyone to go out and be part of this, because I think it's a new way of looking at planning for the City of LA. So thank you for that. So with that, let's go to item number 3 and hear the Recode LA. Thank you.
Good afternoon, honorable members of the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. Eric Lopez, City Planner, for the record. My colleague Deborah Cahan and I will be giving you an update on the Recode LA effort. Just as a frame of reference for the general public and anyone who may or may not be listening, the zoning code is the primary implementation tool for our general plan and its various elements. And this particular zoning code was first established in 1946 and has not been comprehensively revised since then up until now. Recode LA is an effort to comprehensively update that zoning code to make it easier to create livable communities, encourage sustainable development, and foster economic viability. So the 4 main deliverables are a citywide zoning code, a downtown development code, a user-friendly guide, and a web-based code system. We last gave you an update in October 15th, 2013, and where we outlined the work plan and the expected dates of completion. I'd be happy to report that we are on track in terms of the project schedule. But since then, we've completed our full project website at recode.la. It was launched on November 20th, 2013, and has some very exciting features on it that are first of their kind for our department, at least. 2 of them are part of our 24/7 outreach strategy, essentially for people to participate on their time, which is Map It, that's our map-based comment feedback system, and Markup. Both are available on any web-enabled device. We also have produced a series of articles. I encourage you to check out our Zoning 101 series that gives you a primer on what planning is and how it fits in the larger scheme. And there will be more to follow. It also has calendar features, archives, general project information, and whatnot. So in terms of the web-based code deliverable. I'm happy to report that we've had our initial discovery meetings completed. So we're in the process of actually developing the general structure of the new system, including its, I personally consider, very exciting features. The idea of actually being able to access the zoning code on your phone is very enticing to me, so very excited to be reporting on that. And with that, I'll let Deborah take over.
Good afternoon, Councilman. Deborah Cahan for the record, City Planning. We have an upcoming release of our draft zoning code evaluation this Friday, March 7th. This is going to be the first release that staff and the consultants have been working on after listening to the community members and large stakeholders across the city. The zoning code evaluation is a high-level review of the zoning code. It's about, you could call it a 30,000-foot level evaluation that is going to lay out all of the major concerns and challenges and opportunities that we have across the city. These topics include housing, keeping distinct neighborhoods, traffic flow, jobs, sustainability, our downtown center, as well as our commercial corridors and commercial centers. This report is important because it establishes the framework and roadmap for the next 4 years of the project. It's going to be released publicly on March 7th, as I said, and after then we will engage in these 7 public planning forums, as has already been mentioned. In addition to that, at the close of these sessions, we will be hosting one virtually just for the Recode project so that people can join from their own computers. After we've synthesized public feedback, we're going to be coming back to decision makers to present the report and what we've heard. We will be going to the City Planning Commission in May, and we are targeting June for a Plum presentation, and we are targeting July for a City Council presentation. In addition to the upcoming Zoning Code Evaluation Report, we've been busy with a few other items. We've formed a technical advisory committee that's comprised of different departments that have a stake in our code, so that we're all working together to enhance and to achieve our goals simultaneously. We have on that team building and safety, engineering, sanitation, fire, police, and others. In addition, we have formed a zoning advisory committee. The zoning advisory committee consists of 21 members that represent major industries and stakeholders across the city. They represent all regions in the city boundaries. And with the ZAC has monthly meetings that are open to the public, and we have already had 2. They began in January. With us today are our co-chairs of the Zoning Advisory Committee, the ZAC, Sharon Cummins and Edgar Kaladian. I'd like to introduce them to say a word.
It's the first time anyone has clapped for me in this room. Edgar Kaladian, I'm a land use attorney with Paul Hastings, and I also chair VICA's Land Use Committee. It's very nice being up here without the time running on me, but I will keep my comments short. First, I want to thank the Planning Department staff for all the time they put into this and the effort that was undertaken to retain what I consider a top-notch consultant team. The work product that I have seen so far from the consultant team has been amazing. Very, very good work. What we would like to ask of you, and I know frankly Councilman Huizar, your office has been very good with this, is for the council offices to be involved in the process. Sharon and I and the 19 other members of the Zoning Advisory Committee have committed hundreds of hours of our time over the next 5 years to ensure that the city's outdated zoning code is top-notch. It's the best in the country. What, frankly, we cannot happen is 5 years from now, after the city spends millions of dollars preparing the zoning code, is have it up in front of Plum and council and it be a scratch and start over anew. We need the council offices to be part of this process. We welcome the council offices attending our monthly meetings. Sharon and I will be presenting to you every other month, but there'll be brief updates. We want to hear from your planning deputies. We want to hear from you. We want to make sure this zoning code that's going to be proposed represents the interests of community organizations, business organizations, and all 15 council offices. So thank you very much for your time.
what he said. And for my part, I'm Sharon Cummins. I'm presently chair of the Mar Vista Community Council. I co-chair the West Side Regional Alliance Land Use and Planning Group. And I'm very thrilled to be part of this effort because I'm tired of these emails and phone calls. Sharon, please, would you look up all this stuff in the zoning code because I don't understand it. I'm keenly interested in a code that ordinary people can use. I'm keenly interested in a code that you can use on your phone. That'd be fantastic. So I want to echo what Edgar said and encourage everyone to come out and help us get this work done. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, let me thank you for your work and for your time and effort you've been putting into this. Long overdue, obviously, since we hadn't looked at our code comprehensively since the 1940s, and obviously there's been a patchwork of changes here and there. We're not sure if it all fits together, not to mention that the code really defines the type of city we are creating for ourselves. So without us having that review and what the realities of that we live in today, and the realities we would like to live in the future, it makes all the sense that we're putting all this effort into this. So it takes a lot of work, it takes time, it's not easy, it's not just, hey, let me rewrite what I think is right, but it's a matter of taking everybody's input and then going to the table and thinking about what that may be. And to redo it comprehensively, a zone like this, it's obviously a lot of work, tedious work at times, but we appreciate your efforts. With that, any questions or comments? Mr. Englander? No? Okay, so thank you. That concludes these presentations, and thank you for being, fulfilling your timeline. That's one of the most important things, not only to get this update to see what's been going on, but ensure that we're on time with this. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So on items 1 to 3, Councilman will receive and file.
Receive and file those items, yes, thank you. Item number
4.
4.
Yes, Councilman. Item 4 is a joint CAO and CLA report on the city's development services and the integration process, and also the consultant is here, Matrix Consulting.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Jason Kleen, Office of the City Administrative Officer. With your permission, we would just like to give you a brief presentation of the consultant's report. It's a rather lengthy report, so we tried to cut it down into 11 PowerPoint slides. And then we'll have the consultant come up to answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
The consultant, in developing his report, interviewed over 120 city employees, met with the offices of the mayor and all of the council offices, as well as 120 external stakeholders. They also worked with employees representing all of the different labor organizations that make up our development services review process. He developed an as-is description for the development services as a whole. There were 3 drafts of the report that were presented. The first draft was based on the adopted budget and the functional integration of development services across the departments into a single department. The second draft was based on the Price-Labange motion that was adopted in September. The third draft was circulated to the departments for additional comment, which got us to the final report. The final report contained 329 separate recommendations and were covered over 14 different chapters. One of the major questions that was asked in this whole process is, what does success look like? And success is going from silo-based services, which we currently have in some departments, to co-located services that we have some of at the one-stop shops throughout the city, into a fully integrated and seamless services process that incorporates all of the different development review processes. The 11 themes in the consultant's report were measured performance, managing workload demands, organizational structure, process ownership, business processes, resource management, physical space, work culture, regulatory framework, technology, and fee structure. The major recommendations that are major performance in managing workload demands were the city needs to embed the transformation through the use of metrics. The city should measure the development review process in its entirety and remove unnecessary bottlenecks. The city should use a combination of permanent staffing, as needed staffing, overtime, and process streamlining to meet current workload demands. All of the departments delivering development services should, whenever feasible, utilize a mixture of overtime or professional services agreements to manage peak workload demands. For the organizational structure and process ownership, the city should designate responsibility for management of the discretionary review process, the ministerial review process, and the public right-of-way or engineering permit process through the memorandums agreement. The designated general manager should have the authority to design and redesign processes, manage these processes across departmental boundaries, develop metrics, and use measurement systems to assess the success of these processes in serving the customer, and utilize case managers to manage permit processing and discretionary review on behalf of the applicant. For business processes and resource management, the major recommendations are to have the general manager of building and safety be held accountable for streamlining the ministerial process, the general manager of the city planning department to be held accountable for streamlining the discretionary review process, and the general manager of the Bureau of Engineering be held accountable for streamlining the public right-of-way review process. In addition, the city should consolidate the revenues and expenditures of the city's various departments into a single fund administered by a single department. The MOAs that would be developed out of these processes would become part of the city's overall governance structure and become part of the city's development services reform implementation plan. As for physical space and work culture, the city should co-locate all of the development review departments into single one-stop centers located in Metro, Van Nuys, as well as West LA. In addition, the city should conduct a feasibility study to determine whether or not it would be feasible to open one-stop centers in San Pedro and South Los Angeles. In addition, the city should facilitate the following work culture changes through the personnel department: a cultural assessment of the different departments, training of executives, middle manager, and first-line supervisors, and working with interdepartmental teams of employees to implement the recommendations. Effectively, we just need to do a better job investing in our human capital. As for the regulatory framework and technology, the city should continue to do our comprehensive update of the zoning code, Recode LA. The city should enhance its administration of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. Those would be resources in both the planning department as well as the city attorney's office. The city should enhance enforcement of its zoning regulations through code condition compliance as well as code enforcement and building and safety. And Build LA is critical, and we're hopeful that we'll have a proposal sometime in April that we can bring forward to the Plum Committee for consideration, as well as a phasing plan and estimate of expenditures. For the fee structure, the city should review its existing fee structure to ensure that we're at 100% full cost recovery. If we're not at 100% full cost recovery, the department should come forward with plans to get to 100% full cost recovery. And if the mayor and council decide not to be at 100% full cost recovery, we should make sure that we identify which funds are going to be subsidized and which activities would be subsidized, so that we can make sure that all of the departments have the necessary resources to follow through with their commitment. Last but not least are the next steps. The recommendations included in the joint report are the first of many recommendations that will be brought before your committee. It's important to implement the recommendations that are most feasible now and continue the implementations of more difficult recommendations over the next few years. The implementation of these recommendations will require the participation of all of the departments, and we recommend that we utilize the existing working group structure to bring that forward. And the department should report back to the appropriate policy committees as additional recommendations come forward for consideration. And with that, I invite Gary from Matrix Consulting to come up and answer any questions.
I'm sorry, 1 second. We have a council member who needs to step up for a call, and he would like to ask some questions before that. So,
I would, and I'm beyond incredibly interested in this, particularly since I was one that had initiated it formally by motion and by action for either calling for a consolidation or functional transfers. So just want to remind everybody that that's where it started from, and I think where it's come to is looking at in-depth analysis and doing all the research. Where I came from this is not an idea of getting rid of one department or consolidating or merging or managing or marrying 2 departments or 3 or various departments, but the idea that I think everybody admitted that whatever we did have simply wasn't working well. And that's a fact. And that we had to streamline some of the processes and some of the functions. We had to collaborate better, organize better. It means putting people in the right place, both physically and as well as by responsibility. It meant having some transparency and a clear understanding of the process and getting rid of some of the bureaucracy. I'm glad to see some of that happening now as a stage to that effort, and all the folks that weighed into this from day one. And hopefully that dialogue will continue, because I don't think this is a one-fix, cure-all. I think these are baby steps, because you can't move anything in the city easily. It's like turning a ship, and it takes time, which I absolutely understand and appreciate, and I think everybody's willing and ready and eager to do that. And I want to thank Chair of the committee as well for his leadership and those efforts, as well as all the various departments and stakeholders that have weighed into this. I don't think since I threw this out there hasn't been an opinion. I think everybody has had an opinion. But what I have heard loud and clear is that we also have a problem, and we've got to fix it. And so I think some of these things do some of that, at least to initiate some of the low-hanging fruit, if you will. Some of the things in item 1 that we should look at doing immediately, and I support. I didn't see a timeline or a budget based on that. So my first question is, and I'm not sure who can answer this, will this be done as, if approving this or moving these recommendations forward, most of this are reports back, in 90 days and 120 days. In fact, for the most part, they're all reports back for various things, except for really item 1. Everything else is report back. So in item 1, or item 2 on the final report, I guess, looking at the original, my original notes. So item 2 are the instructions for the general managers for building and safety and planning, public works, Bureau of Engineering, et cetera, to develop the memorandum of understanding, look at the discretionary approvals, moving some of those items on item 2. But is there a timeline and a budget for that, or will that be part of the budget process?
It's anticipated that if the council's support of these policy recommendations, that the mayor will include these in his proposed budget.
Okay. And then the second thing is, I didn't see in this that we would immediately develop a new organizational chart that would be posted for the public as well. Would that be part of this? And a flow chart as well?
Correct. As we negotiate through the different MOAs in terms of how we're going to streamline these business processes, we would show the difference between the existing structure as well as the proposed structure, and be able to report back on the efficiencies gained by streamlining that process.
Okay. All right, those are really all the questions I had. Obviously, as these report backs come, this will be constantly refined and redefined, and I think that's where I've always hoped the direction of this would take place. That we would start looking at what are some of the immediate things we can do, and then what can we do ongoing. And so I want to thank the consultants as well as the departments, all the city staff. There's been a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money spent on this, but I sort of look at this as a new beginning, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council member, before you leave, I would like to state there is a recommendation within the report still there to consolidate development services. It just says we've got to do some work before we get there, but we still need to get there. And I just wanted to leave you with that.
I appreciate that. Thank you,
sir.
You have the floor. Were you going to make a presentation as well?
No, sir. I was here to answer questions of any of the council members.
Oh, okay. Well, with that, then, let me start off by asking you questions.
Okay.
And first, I want to thank everybody who has got us to this point, including my colleague, Mr. Englander. It was his forcefulness and focus that I think has resulted in having these recommendations put forth that will continue to allow us to streamline and improve our development processes. And as I was about to begin to ask you questions, I have a number of public comment cards I just saw, so maybe we should take those up first, and then...
I can step out and come back. You keep me on the queue if you
Okay,
want.
let's
I'll
do that.
come back
Okay,
for a vote.
yeah.
I don't know how long.
Let's do that first. Let's take up our public comments, and then I'll come back to some questions I have for you and for staff. Yeah. First, Kelly Bernard from the mayor's office is here. You don't look like Kelly Bernard.
Good afternoon, Councilman. Kevin Keller here for Kelly Bernard. Kelly Bernard had a meeting at 4, so my apologies. She just stepped out.
Okay, good. You know, usually we don't let substitutes, but, you know, this is from the mayor's office, so we'll allow you to come up and speak on this.
Delighted to fill out a card, and thank you very much. Just on behalf of the mayor, wanted to just share some brief remarks. The mayor is very pleased to share his support for the important work to improve development services as outlined in the consultant report. Our office has worked closely with the council's leadership and the general managers of Planning, Building and Safety, DOT, BOE, Department of Transportation, Bureau of Engineering, and Fire in developing targeted reforms that make sense and will improve the customer experience at the City of Los Angeles. When the mayor took office, a wide range of options were being discussed, including a complete merger of the Department of City Planning and the Department of Building and Safety. The mayor said he would take a fresh look at all options, and after thoroughly looking at all options, he supports consolidation of key functions in lieu of a full consolidation of these departments. And most importantly here is what will improve services for our community. Our city now has the opportunity to move forward with the consolidation and integration of key components of the development process, targeted improvements that directly respond to what we heard from the residents, from the business community, and expert hired to study the issue. In addition to the 320 specific recommendations in the report, there are 3 main points in the report that the mayor fully supports. The report creates expanded geographic development services teams to better serve our communities through co-location of city planning, building and safety, transportation, engineering, and fire department staff at our development service centers. In addition, as you'll hear, to the existing centers in downtown and Van Nuys, the mayor supports studying the feasibility of expanding geographic development teams to West LA, South LA, and San Pedro. And yes, we are very interested in the council's action, so we can try to include as much as possible in the forthcoming budget recommendations from our office. Number 2, following the recommendation of the consultant and best practices across communities, the report recommends shifting zoning review to the Department of City Planning, providing zoning and land use guidance early in the process. And we want to continue to work with the general managers of both the Departments of Building and Safety and the Department of City Planning to carefully develop a transition plan that works for both departments. Also highlighting to improve efficiency and avoiding, more importantly, disruptions to all projects currently in the pipeline. And finally, the report expands and consolidates code enforcement authority in the Department of Building and Safety. And this is something that's very important to the mayor. Expanding resources for code enforcement to provide clear guidance to bring properties into compliance is a big concern, and to allow our code enforcement to be more responsive to community concerns is also a plus. So we look forward to working with both the departments, and our office also would like to thank and acknowledge the leadership of the Plum Committee members on this, and thank the offices of the CAO and CLA for bringing together a clear path for future implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Doug Astronaut and Johnny Utronic.
Thank you. Good afternoon again. My name is Doug Arsenault of the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, representing over 400 major employers who have regular business before the city. We want to applaud Matrix Consulting in their report that calls for expedient changes to the development process. Predictability is key. Ensuring that success occurs will require ensuring consistency and efficiency. We want to reiterate the need for metrics to determine success, as well as the principle of strong leadership. We ask the council empower our general managers to ensure a well-trained staff that creates consistent decision-making. Regarding fee structures, we ask the council bear in mind the development community is already paying increased fees for long-term planning. We hope that by eliminating duplicative review processes, we can result in more appropriate fee structures. We also ask that you do not lose sight of the long-term reforms that are underway and that have been discussed today to ensure a more efficient process that incorporates meaningful feedback. We look We hope for an ongoing conversation, bearing in mind the vision of the mayor as well as the council in creating a consolidated department consistent with the review of the 9 cities in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Johnny Utronic, Margaret Taylor.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Johnny Utrinich. I'm president of the MCIA. The MCIA represents over 800 inspectors working for the city of Los Angeles. First, I'd like to compliment the Matrix Group on their study. Gary was a little overbearing at times, but he is very professional, and the learning curve was really high, and I think he did a great job. We're committed. I'm a working inspector. I'm a president of the union, but I work in inspection every day. We're committed to making it a better place, making it better for all the constituents in this city. Although all large reports, you can't always agree with everything. However, anything that we don't agree with, we're going to work with the departments and try to find a better solution to make this a better place. Because you know what? The bottom line is we are customer service, and that's what we see our role is. As a union too. We're here to serve not only our members, but the people. Like I said, I'm first an inspector, then I'm a union person. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Margaret Taylor, Noel Fleming.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. First of all, I'd like to, Margaret Taylor, Apex LA. I have applicants throughout the city of Los Angeles. I've worked in projects throughout the state of California. I just really want to, first of all, support the Matrix Report. I think it was extremely useful and very effective. Support the Central City Association's letter submitted today. I also want to thank Michael Legrand and Rocky Wiles for their presentation on the Condition Compliance Unit and the Recode LA efforts. I just want to point out that these are occurring simultaneously, and as much as possible that the Condition Compliance Unit can anticipate some of the goals and objectives and points in the Matrix Report as they are going through their reorganizational process. It'll make sense to help facilitate that actually continuing to work well later. And my last point is that I keep in mind that the city has not been streamlined. It has not been very transparent or clear. A lot of businesses are going to be out of compliance. And as we show patience and understanding with the city as they reorganize, and we anticipate everyone will not have thought of everything, we also have to anticipate a lot of these businesses are going to need some understanding too, and how are we going to effectively help them become compliant, facilitate compliance, not be punitive or too costly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Noel Fleming, Carmen Hayes Walker.
Good afternoon. Noel Fleming, Director of Legislative Affairs at Central City Association. First of all, I did want to thank city staff and the consultant for their very thoughtful and in-depth analysis of development reform in the city of LA. I've submitted to the public record, and I think you should have before you a very detailed letter that I wrote. I just wanted to make 3 quick points. The first is on recommendation number 1, which involves process ownership for the 3 different general managers. I ask that the general managers consider a multi-departmental policy for interpretation and implementation of design guidelines. What we're having now is that projects will be approved in one form at City Planning Commission, and then they get tripped up during the permitting process with BOE. So that's just one thing that I wanted to point out, so that projects can get built and permitted the way that they were intended to be designed and entitled. The second point in relation to recommendation number 5, which is managing peak workload, I asked that the city allow the use of third-party consultants to help with the processing of environmental impact reports, so that we can keep managing the current pipeline of projects. And the last thing is that I ask that you remain steadfast in your commitment to development reform. A couple things are going to be easy. A lot of the things are not going to be easy and are going to require commitment and dedication over a number of years. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Carmen Hayes Walker, and finally Romero Malvo.
Thank you. I'm Carmen Hayes Walker, Vice President, AFSCME Local 3090. I'm also a senior clerk typist, 33 years of city service. It is our understanding that the department is able to accomplish the majority of the recommendations before you, the Department of Building and Safety I'm talking about. As an employee organization representing the clerical support services for the city of Los Angeles, that includes all the departments involved, We will be meeting with the CAO staff and requesting them to identify any issues that have a labor relations impact. It is the CAO's responsibility to disclose that information to us. Our members provide excellent and direct customer service to the citizens of Los Angeles and are dedicated to doing so continuously. AFSCME is always interested in working with the City of LA in any area that improves services for the citizens and our members that our members provide.
Thank you. Romero Malvo.
Romero Malvo. I'm a resident of Los Angeles. I'm a resident of South Los Angeles. And I just wanted to direct my comments to the report backs. South Los Angeles does have development. We will be anticipating the development of many of the former CRA sites, as well as development in the transit-oriented zones. In looking at the reports, it's clear that the consultants made an effort to find out the problems and based their report on that. It's not clear that the actual recommendations were shared with the community. And two of those recommendations I have some concern about that I would like to know that the developers of South Los Angeles weighed in on. One of them is that there should be complete staffing of the different development offices, but that South Los Angeles and San Pedro will be deferred to the CAO. I'd really like to get some kind of comment from the developer community. The other one had to do with the geographic focus, but South Los Angeles is not part of that. So,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you submit a card, sir? You did? I didn't get it. Okay. Come on up. We'll fill one out for you. I got in trouble last time because I didn't allow a person to speak and we had to hear the whole item again. Oh, you were under general comment, but okay, so you could speak. This is the item you want to speak on? General Jeff, go right ahead.
This is not general comment?
No, this is item number 4. Okay, we're correct. Thank you. Thank you very much. So let me ask the consultant to come up, and I want to thank you for the work you did. I think this was a thorough review of our planning procedures and our development procedures, and so I wanted to thank you for the work you did. And I had a chance to glance through the over 600-page report over the weekend, and I have a few questions. And from your view, what are the top 5 recommendations in this report?
I'd start with co-location. I think that's something that's critical and needs to be done within the next 12 months. And I think by and large we're trying to turn our one-stop permit centers into true one-stop permit centers where all the major players are located. DCP, DBS, DOT, BOE, and Fire all need to be co-located in those departments. That is something that needs to be treated as a high priority. The second is Build LA, and we've got some recommendations that need to happen now, not 3 or 4 years from now. One of those is the electronic plan check. We need to enable that within the next 24 months. The other is a recommendation that DOT actually made, was just to pull the 5 disparate permit information systems together under the Build LA portal so that they seem like one system. So that's something that I would consider a high priority. The third is streamlining business processes, and all I can say is that there's no shortage of opportunities to streamline the development review processes in Los Angeles. There are lots of opportunities, both small and large, and they're based on prevailing practices. None of the recommendations we've got in the report to streamline development review processes are cutting edge. They're by and large things you can observe in any other city in the United States. The fourth is regulatory framework. And we're talking basically about we need to enhance the level of effort we're making towards updating community plans, and that's no surprise to the Director of Department of City Planning. The key issue there is we don't have the staff resources necessary to do that. And what I find heartwarming basically about Los Angeles is both sides of the table are talking about the need to update community plans, and that's both the development community as well as the community, the neighborhood councils themselves. We also need to deal, as Jason mentioned, with the need to update our CEQA guidelines. They're basically out of date. We need to allocate staff resources and consulting resources to updating those CEQA guidelines in consultation with the Office of the City Attorney. And lastly, something that every neighborhood council I talked to talked about needing to happen, which is we need to enhance the enforcement of our zoning regulations in the communities. With the level of service we offer right now is just abysmal in terms of the response to those particular codes and violations, and really it's just almost pure reactive right now. The fifth is employees, and really this report is long. It's has a lot of recommendations. None of that can get implemented unless we involve employees at all levels of the organization, not just executives, not just middle managers, but line employees need to be involved in the implementation of the report itself. And lastly is organizational structure. While we are not recommending consolidation right now, there are a number of other organizational recommendations that need to be happening, such as reorganizing DCP so we go to a true geographical based organization, and that's going to require additional staff resources as we recommend within the report. And then that's I guess the primary priorities as I would see them, the 6 priorities.
And what do you see as the biggest obstacles to actually implementing these recommendations?
One is long-term commitment. I think as a number of speakers have said, this is not something that's going to be implemented overnight. It's going to take a couple years to do it. And the point of reference I would make is to the Garcia Report, which was developed in 1995. And it's not like this report that you see before you is the first time we focused on streamlining the development review processes. This thing has been ongoing for decades. The Garcia Report, 7 years after it was submitted in 1995, only 50% of the recommendations were implemented. And so my concern here is unless we provide sustained focus on implementation of these recommendations, that 5 years from now we'll end up still, or 7 years from now, we'll still end up with a small proportion of the recommendations being implemented. And Plum and the Office of the Mayor really have to drive the implementation. Without that sustained attention from Plum and the Office of the Mayor, the implementation will not happen. The other issue, I think, is basically something you face in any change in any organization are turf issues. And we face 2 major turf issues here. They're actually part of your motions today. One is basically zoning clearance within the construction service centers and one permit centers. Right now that's done by DBS. We're saying that needs to be done by DCP in large, and DCP will need some additional staffing to do that. And second is zoning and code compliance. And we've really cut the staff in zoning and code enforcement in DBS in half over the last 5 years. And we really need to breathe some life into code enforcement so that we provide effective and responsive level of service to make Los Angeles a better city to live in, basically. Third would be employee involvement, is that we really need, again, to make employees involved in implementation of this. It really won't happen without their meaningful participation. And 6 is basically fifth is lack of accountability by general managers, which is by and large, each general manager needs to be held accountable for their processes. Michael should be held accountable for the discretionary review process and streamlining it wherever that process goes. If that tentative map ends up in BOE, Michael still needs to be held accountable for making sure that process is streamlined, but he needs to be given the authority for that as well. And right now he does not have the authority to manage that process citywide. Michael needs that authority. Ray Chan needs the authority for the ministerial process to manage the building permits wherever they go. And similarly, BOE needs the responsibility and authority to manage the public improvement process wherever it goes. So while we are not recommending consolidation right now, we are suggesting that we need to establish responsibility for managing the processes as if it's almost a virtual consolidation, as if it was consolidated. But again, for Michael to manage the discretionary review process, he has to be given the authority to do that, because from time to time, Michael or Ray or Michael Cantor are going to be stepping on people's toes that don't work for them. And they need to do that with the policy authority from Plum and the Office of the Mayor to exercise that authority. And then lastly is the staff resources, which is we can't expect people to deliver permits much more quickly than they are now if they don't have the staff resources. We're just setting people up for failure. And I have a key concern here that we are saying, by and large, that the cycle times for Los Angeles do not meet metrics, do not meet what we have observed in other well-managed cities. And there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't expect Los Angeles to be able to deliver those metrics and those levels of service, but they can only do that if they've got the staff resources. And I would say in several departments, generally outside of the Building Enterprise Fund, we have some key problems there in terms of adequate staff resources. And with that, I would say those would be the key obstacles from my perspective.
Thank you. And so you've had a chance to review thoroughly the development process, and we've got this report. The main thing, I think, is that we implement now the recommendations. I'm in full support of these recommendations. We want to move forward. You've seen the role of the Plum Committee in the development process. What do you think should be, or what role should Plum play in making sure that these recommendations are implemented?
Plum has to make sure that the recommendations in the report, not less than 85% of the recommendations in the report, get implemented. And by and large, this is something that needs to be on the agenda of Plum not less than every 2 to 3 months, to basically keep it on the griddle, to make sure that there's heat applied to the general managers to implement the recommendations in the report. Secondly, to require the general managers, the CAO's office, and to request the mayor's office to bring back status reports every 2 or 3 months regarding implementation. But lastly, I would suggest one of the key things that Plum should request, and I believe it's one of the items on your agenda today, is that each general manager has to bring back their own plan of implementation. I already have seen the one for DBS, and they already agreed to implement not less than 85% of the recommendations within the report. I think that's the metric we would expect, nothing less than 85%. So first, I would say, first on the agenda should be that each department bring back their proposed response, agree or disagree, to the recommendations and their proposed plan of implementation in terms of timing. Plum's responsibility at that point in time is to see whether you agree with the response of the general managers or whether you disagree, and you might say that we think you should implement that particular recommendation. So I would expect you're going to see some dissent. I would expect you're going to see some disagreement. But I think the metric that I would expect, the metric we've observed in every study I've ever done for the past 40 years, is not less than 85% implementation of the recommendations. Otherwise, we're right back with the Garcia Report where we were in 1985 or 1995, where 7 years later we only had 50% implementation. And it's a waste of money because, in another couple of years you'll be hiring another consulting firm to take another look at your development review process.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you
sir.
for your work on this. It was much appreciated. Very well done. Thank you. To the CAO, I have a question. How much money is left over from the current contract with Matrix?
There's $51,000 in it.
How much?
$51,000.
$51,000. Okay. Good. Okay. Thank you. Let me do this then. We have received a joint CAO-CLA report in which we have before this committee. My staff has passed around some modified recommendations to that report that we have submitted. It's been circulated, correct? I want to add that to the recommendation, modify the recommendations in the CLA-CAO report. If we could delete item number 5 from that, from the request of the City Attorney's Office that had asked for a necessary ordinance to effectuate the above recommendations, we will come back to that at some later point. It's a matter of procedure, proper procedure. So we'll delete item number 5. I do want to add at the end of that we instruct and authorize the CAO and the CLA to negotiate and amend the city's current contract with Matrix Consulting to add additional reporting period of 1 year. The additional reporting period of 1 year will allow Matrix to monitor and report on progress made by departments on a quarterly basis on all actions taken by the City Council and Mayor relative to the Development Reform Initiative, and also instruct the CAO to identify the necessary funding, including the use of Construction Service Trust Fund, one-stop funds to fund the amended contract. Okay. You got that?
In addition to, on your amendments, on recommendation 2, if you could add the city attorney and modify the 5th sentence in that recommendation to read a status report back in 90 days rather than a report back.
Okay.
Add
So-
status report back.
That sounds good. And also on the actual report itself, it's a minor point, but my review of this on page 3, if we could add on page 3, recommendation, well, actually, this changes the whole thing, so, well, that's okay. I'm sorry, we could, that's fine. Okay, so given those changes, we'll include this as a report from the chair to the full council, the CLA-CAO report, and take action on this as soon as possible so the clerk can work with the council president's office to agendize this for full council as soon as possible. Since we want to include these recommendations as the budget process begins,
Verbatim?
the mayor's office needs to consider these changes in that budget, and so we would like this to be a council action so that the mayor could consider it in his budget upon release. So,
Councilman, also an additional recommendation is to include in the committee report to denote that we are modifying the recommendations per your amendments.
okay, let's do that. Anything else? CLO, CLA, city attorney? We're good. Thank you very much. We'll have that be a recommendation from the chair to the full council, and we'll go from there. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for participating. And
Public comment,
this
Councilman?
item will move forward, and now we'll go on to general public comment. General Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize for the confusion earlier. My name is General Jeff, Downtown Los Angeles Neighborhood Council Board of Directors, also a Skid Row Committee activist and Chair of the Skid Row Public Space Task Force. And just as a matter of clarification, I just want to say that we understand that the Skid Row's borders are from 3rd to the north, 7th to the south, Main Street to the west, and Alameda Street to the east. And in regards to the Little Tokyo CDO, we understand as it stands right now, there are 2 parcels that are south of 3rd Street. That would be Centenary Church, led by Reverend Mark Nakagawa, and also on the southeast corner of 3rd and Central, and the Buddhist temple on the southwest corner of 3rd and Omar. And so we do fully approve and support the plan as it sits right now, that those 2 parcels can, in fact, be associated with the Little Tokyo community, and the rest remain Skid Row. So if that's how it stands, we support the CDO. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Nice haircut.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. That concludes this meeting. Thank you all.